I took one of their a semester-long course that was the title of the course was, what was it? It was Mitigating the Secondary Disasters of Faith-Based Response.
What?
Yeah.
Wow.
So the U.S. government gave courses for secular people in the working on how to manage the crisis and chaos that churches responding to disaster caused.
Welcome to the Kingdom Culture in Global Response, and it is my pleasure today to have Carl Ladd here from Bethel Global Response to chat about what does it look like to see the kingdom invade that whole area.
Thanks, Dave.
Carl, welcome.
Thank you.
Good to
so
see
good
you,
to be
man.
here. Yeah.
Carl,
good to see
we'll get to Bethel Global Response in a bit, but
Okay.
For everyone who's watching, you do not want to miss this. Bethel Global Response is one of the bravest, most dangerous parts of the Bethel movement, and they go into some of the craziest places and bring heaven to earth. So I cannot wait to get to that. But Carl, it takes a pretty unique cat to lead the Bethel Global Response. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your family. Like, how did that journey start? What made you want to do a global response connected to Bethel?
Yeah. Well, thanks, Dave. Yeah. I mean, it's such an honor to, be able to lead Bethel Global Response. And like you say, kind of be able to run in to places that are hurting and partner with local churches, local organizations that are on the ground facing it, and just kind of be our Bethel's Global Response kind of role and desires kind of be a fresh wind in their sails when they're in the midst of chaos and crisis. For me, it's been really, honestly, most of my life, loving, it's Jesus in the storm. Like, that's like my passion is our King of Kings moving in all of his glory and goodness when everything's going wrong.
So this started at a young age. Like, this is something you just naturally...
Well, so I grew up in YWAM, Youth with a Mission. My parents were missionaries there. So I grew up kind of seeing a lot of the world and poverty amidst, out there. But actually, when I was 5 years old, I was part of a significant earthquake in Southern California.
Oh.
So we were real close to the epicenter.
Wow.
So our house took heavy damage and things, and it was traumatic as like a 5-year-old. But my experience in that, experiences is it's I like to think of it almost like a prism. You know what a prism is? Your light comes in and a rainbow comes out on the other side.
Yeah.
Like, the things that happen to us in life, really, it matters. Like, it always matters what's our heart posture and like what's our outlook, right? Yeah. Like, and so for me with my parents, that earthquake happened a week after my parents decided to go into YWAM. And they were literally, not to say the earthquake happened, like, it wasn't caused by God, like, my family's not the result of that, right? Yes. But God has the ability to take things that should be devastating and turn them for his glory.
Yeah.
So my parents were asking God, okay, we feel you calling us into missions. What do we do with our house? What do we do with all of our belongings? And financially, we can't afford to do this. How's this going to happen? A week later, earthquake happens and destroys pretty much everything they own, and insurance pays them top dollar for all of it. And so all of a sudden, they don't have any of their stuff that
they're not tied to anything.
They're not tied to anything, and they got their bank account stacked like for the next several years for them. So, like, what was devastating, like, my perspective because of my parents' faith and their outlook became like, oh wow, like, God actually used crisis and what was meant to be, what should have knocked us down was actually God, his ability to use it to actually set us up for His glory. So it started then, and then just a few other events through my childhood and as a teenager that I fell in love with the side of Jesus that's in the storm.
Wow.
Bill Johnson says that there's elements of His character and nature that are only revealed in the shadow of death.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
it's those elements that I truly fell in love with.
Yeah.
Like, grew up in a Christian home, obviously YWAM, all this stuff I've already said about my parents, but Jesus became my king. Like, I fell in love with Jesus in the midst of crisis, like in the midst of pain, in the midst, like it was that side of Him where He's so real and so present, and that you can't see. Honestly, you can't see outside of that storm. And so, that's like, it's my job or it's my ministry. It's what I, get to do as Bethel Global Response. But honestly, I feel selfish in it because I get to see a side of His character and nature that you can't see
Wow.
outside of it. And that's the side that I absolutely love.
I love it. I love it because the world is constantly going through turmoil. The world is constantly, Jesus even said, in this world you're going to have wars and rumors of wars.
Yeah.
But rejoice because I have overcome it.
Yeah.
People watching this right now, have a think about your own life. Like, what are some of the storms you've encountered? The earthquake for you as a young person was formative because Jesus encountered you in that. What are some of the storms that you've encountered? You might want to put that into the chat for other people to read. But how did Jesus reveal Himself to you in that storm? Like that's the key. I love Bethel Global Response because honestly, when you would come back to staff meetings and tell us, hey, we've just been to this, we've been to Haiti, or we've been to the tornado that hit this part of America, or we've been to wherever, the Ukraine, the stories of Jesus in the storm blew my mind, honestly, like blew our minds. Tell us a little bit about Bethel Global Response. Like, what is it? Because it's wild. It's not a tame little pussycat.
No, it definitely doesn't fit very many molds. But so Bethel Global Response, we shorten it to BGR just because Bethel Global Response can be a bit of a mouthful. So it was. It started as Chris Valentin's vision. He had a desire, in his words, what would it be to have a supernatural Red Cross? Wow. So what would it be to have a ministry that can move on the scale and size and impact that the Red Cross has, responding to practical physical needs, coupled with the kingdom, the fullness of Jesus in the midst of that. And so Bethel Global Response was birthed out of that. So it was about 10, 12 years ago, I think.
12 years ago?
Yeah, something like, maybe 10 years ago.
What did it look like at the start? Was it you and a plane ticket and a little bit of money? Like, what was
No, so there was a Jordan Pacilio started it, and so I came right after to kind of support. But honestly, it was a lot of proving ground in those beginning. Like, what is it for a church to respond to disasters effectively? So I went to college for this and got a degree in disaster response and management.
No way.
And in college, I took a FEMA, Federal Emergency Management Agency, which is the governing body here in the United States for disasters. I took one of their a semester-long course that was the title of the course was, what was it? It was Mitigating the Secondary Disasters of Faith-Based Response.
What?
Yeah.
Wow.
So the U.S. government gave courses for secular people in the working on how to manage the crisis and chaos that churches responding to disaster caused. And they called it secondary disasters.
So in the
a faith-based response.
In the church's effort to help,
Yeah.
in a disaster, we've actually create other disasters.
Yeah, and so
Ouch.
as I'm going through this as a student, I'm like, we got to change this. Like, the church shouldn't be a secondary disaster. It should be setting the standard
Yes.
for what does effective care after an emergency look like.
Wow.
And that was Chris's vision as well. Like, okay, we can't, great intentions with poor implementation causes really, really bad outcomes.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of that is caused by that. Church's desire, we got to help, let's go, and they show up, feet on the ground. But if you don't know how that church can plug into the response framework, if you don't have shelter, food, water, all these things, all of a sudden you have a lot of people there that are now victims as well, needing more care, needing more provision.
Wow.
So over the course of a decade, we are seeing that shift where now FEMA is doing courses on how to utilize the faith-based community and the strengths of churches in their communities. So we are seeing a significant shift in that, which is super exciting. And honestly, Bethel Global Response has been a tip of that spear in a lot of ways. Other churches as well. We're not the only tip, but we're just seeing across the board here domestically and also around the world, the church starting to truly arise and shine in that field, which has been really exciting. But that's the heart behind Bethel Global Response, and really through the local church. So the saying we have is, what would it look like if the local church was prepared and equipped on their community's worst day? And so for the church to be the church, that's a mandate. Care for the orphan, care for the widow, the migrant, the person traveling through your town. I think we look at the failures of these organizations, whether it be the UN or Red Cross, or there's a lot of frustration towards these things. Hey, they're not meeting what the need is.
Yeah.
But honestly, it's not their mandate; it's the church's mandate. And so it's time for us to start stepping up and seeing Jesus is the only solution. Like, it's not food, it's not water, it's not money.
No.
The solution is Jesus, and we get to start giving it out. So it's been exciting.